I love that today we get to be here and we get to hear from 6 different candidates from different sides of the aisle. And Robert Hurt, who is the Executive Director for the Center of Law and Government, is going to come and be our MC for today. Can we give it up for Robert? He's just a great leader here on campus.
Good morning. I'm, as David said, I'm Robert Hurt, the Director for the Center for Law and Government here at Liberty University. It's a job that is so much fun because I get to work with students and get to talk about the political issues of the day. And as you all know, we have an election coming up a week from tomorrow, November 6th, and it's a very important election. I appreciate especially David's words of wisdom and peace. I think as we think about the tragedies like we saw in Pittsburgh over the weekend, I think it's also an opportunity for us to think about civility in politics and the idea that we have a government that runs on majorities and winning elections, but at the same time, you build those majorities through consensus and respect. For everyone who's running. And so with that in mind, we're really delighted that we have 6 of the 7 candidates here with us or represented here today to talk about their campaigns. And so we welcome them. Let's give them an applause here. We are grateful to each of you for the sacrifices that you make to offer yourself for public office. But before we get started with our program, I'd like to invite Mark Akers out, who is a chaplain at the Helms School. You know, the Center for Law and Government is a collaboration between the Helms School of Government, the law school, and I know that we also have a lot of communications students here today, as well as students from all other disciplines as well. And let me bring Mark out here for an invocation. Thank you.
Would you please stand with me this morning as we pray and ask God's blessing on this meeting? If you would, just bow your heads as we pray. Hear my prayer, O Lord, and our God and our Creator and our Father. We request your presence and your blessing on today's gathering. Lord, we declare that you alone are holy and worthy of worship. I ask you, God, and we in this room unite and ask that you awaken the heart of this nation, and God, that you transform us. We ask, God, that you cause our hearts of stone to become hearts tender to you and your will, and Lord, that our heart be tender to our fellow man. Heavenly Father, I petition you for the grace and strength to lead in this time of our nation's history. And God, we ask for your anointing upon the leaders that are here today, and your spirit on the leaders across this nation. May your word be written upon their hearts, guide their decisions, and echo from their lips. Help us this day for the glory of your name. And everyone said, amen.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mark. So we have an election day a week from tomorrow. The Center for Law and Government, is devoted to our founding principles, promoting our founding principles here and off campus. One of the elements, I think, of good citizenship is to be informed, to always inform yourself about what the issues are facing this country, and inform yourself about the candidates that offer themselves up. So to that end, we have hosted debates here. We had a town hall, U.S. Senate town hall here in September. But these programs that we offer are all devoted to those founding principles, perhaps chief among them, the right of self-government, These elections that we have coming up on a week from Tuesday are historic. If you've been watching the news, if you watch television at all, you know how hotly contested these races are. The U.S. Senate, which is currently comprised of 51 Republicans and 49 Democrats/independents, about a third of the Senate is up for election. We have one of those races that is up next Tuesday. we have one of those races right here in Virginia. And we have 3 candidates. We have Corey Stewart. Corey Stewart is a Republican, Matt Waters, the independent, and Tim Kaine, who's a Democrat. And they are all represented here today, and you're going to hear from them. In terms of the House races, the House currently, the majority is it's 235 to 193. Republicans have the majority. The Republicans have the Speaker. There are many people who seem to think that the majority very well may change in next Tuesday, a week from Tuesday. So all those House races are very, very important. You have to have, so the Republicans hold a majority with 235. You have to have 218 to be able to claim the majority and have and elect a Speaker. We're delighted that we have 3 of our 4 candidates represented here today. We have Denver Riggleman, who is running, the Republican candidate running in the 5th District, which is spans from Southside Virginia to North Carolina line, all the way up through Campbell County, Bedford, up into, all the way up to Fauquier County, which is up at the northern end of the state. So it's sort of the central Southside Virginia seat. We also have represented the candidates in the 6th District. The 6th District is more in the Valley, and actually the city of Lynchburg is in the 6th District, so much of Liberty University is in the 6th District. For those parts that are in Campbell County, those are actually in the 5th. But the 6th District is sort of the Valley, sort of Roanoke all the way up to Winchester. Beautiful district, largely agricultural. But a very important district. And so we are pleased to have Jennifer Lewis, who's a Democratic candidate and first time running for office. And then we also have Dan Webb, who is the campaign manager for Ben Klein, who could not be here with us, but he is the Republican running for that seat. The program today will be basically this. I'll make a brief introduction of the candidate, and then we're going to see video that has been given to us, advertisements, so you can get a sense of what the campaign issues are as promoted on television by the candidates, and then each candidate is going to get 7 minutes. And then we'll run through the Senate candidates first, 5th District, then the 6th District, and then once it's over today, there are campaign tables that you probably saw on your way in. We invite our candidates to come and linger and speak with you all so that you all can engage with them directly. But that's how the program's going to go. So let's, I'm going to go ahead and get started. We're going to introduce our first candidate. Corey Stewart is running for the U.S. Senate. He's a Republican candidate. He lives in Prince William County. He has been on the Board of Supervisors of Prince William County for about 15 years. The last 12 of those years, he has been the chairman of the Prince William Board of Supervisors. And of course, anyone who is from Northern Virginia knows Prince William County is one of the largest, population-wise, one of the largest counties in Virginia. He ran for nomination to run for governor last year. And he won the nomination to run for the U.S. Senate this year. It gives me great pleasure to introduce him, but first let's watch his campaign video. Thank you.
Illegal aliens invade America, and Tim Kaine and the Democrats encourage it, calling for open borders and abolishing ICE. If they win, millions more will follow, overwhelming our hospitals, schools, and social services, smuggling drugs and sex trafficking. Tim Kaine talks about an America for all, but Kaine really means open borders for all. I'm Corey Stewart. I approve this message because Virginia needs a senator who will support President Trump to stop the illegal alien invasion. Good morning. Good morning. Great to be here at Liberty. I feel like I've been here so many times over the past couple of years, and it's great to be with all of you this morning. You know, my dad was a longshoreman, he was a working man, and he was a Democrat. But back then, the Democratic Party was very different from the Democratic Party of today. Today, we have a Democratic Party that ridicules our religious beliefs, ridicules our values. And on the issue of life, once upon a time, you had a Democratic Party that had room for those who were pro-life. Not today. In fact, earlier this year,
when Senator Kaine was given the choice of voting for legislation that would have restricted abortion after the 5th month of pregnancy, after science had determined that the unborn baby could feel pain, it was going to restrict the abortion at that point. Tim Kaine voted against even that restriction. Tim Kaine has said he's okay with abortion right up until the moment of birth. Folks, those of us who are pro-life are not those who are radical. It is those who believe that it is okay to kill a baby up to the moment of birth. Those are the radicals. And I want to say to you, I am very proudly 100% pro-life. It is our obligation to protect the unborn in this country. And the Democrats have gone so far. They've abandoned the working man. Unfair trade agreements that have gutted 4 million manufacturing jobs in this country. 4 million of those jobs. You know, when you graduate from Liberty University, a lot of you will be in the service area. A lot of you will be attorneys and physicians and accountants and so forth. But ultimately, those jobs, that prosperity depends upon a strong manufacturing base. We have a president of the United States. Now, this is my background. I work as an international trade attorney. I can tell you I believe in free trade, but it's got to be free trade in both directions. And as President Trump has stood up to our trading partners like China to make sure that they open up their markets to our goods, what have the Democrats done? They've opposed those efforts. They've said that this is going to result in a trade war with China. Let me tell you something. We're already in a trade war with China as a result of unfair trade practices by the Chinese government and others. We have lost 4 million jobs. We have a president who's standing up for our workers, standing up for American businesses. I will stand with the president as we bring back manufacturing into the United States of America. That's what we're going to do. And of course, every time there's a tragedy, like at the synagogue in Pittsburgh, every time there's a school shooting, what is the first thing that the Democrats want to do? What is the first thing that Tim Kaine wants to do? The first thing that they want to do is not crack down on the criminals who are committing these crimes. The first thing that they want to do is take away your Second Amendment rights. No community, no nation has ever become safer by limiting the gun rights of law-abiding citizens. You know something? I can tell you this. I'm very proud of Liberty University. One of the things I'm most proud about Liberty University is that it respects your Second Amendment rights, and you have the right to concealed carry here at Liberty. If we want to stop gun violence in this country, there is only one way to do it, and that's to let the criminals know that if they confront you, if they go into your place of worship, if they go into your synagogue, if they go into your church, if they go into your school, that they will be met by law-abiding citizens who will stop the violence by confronting the killer. That is how we're going to stop these shootings. And finally, I want to talk about illegal immigration. I know that video is very hard-hitting, but it goes to a very deep truth here in this country. A nation that doesn't have strong borders is not a nation at all. And it's not just about the criminal illegal aliens who are coming across our border. If we allow the thousands of people who are headed toward our border in this so-called caravan right now, 15,000, whatever it is, by the time they get here, what is the message to the 500 million people who live south of our border? 80 million people who live south of our border, 80 million of them live on less than $2 per day. If we allow these people in, and I know there's some sad cases there, if we let them in, 80 million people will see that all you have to do is walk across the border with the United States, and American taxpayers will feed you, they will clothe you, we will educate their children, and we will provide their health care. What is the message to the 80 million people who live on less than $2 per day? They're going to come up, and we're going to have a humanitarian crisis that's going to dwarf the humanitarian crisis that we're currently seeing at the border with these 15,000 people. And we have to think about our own citizens first. You know, this will overwhelm our schools. It overwhelms our hospitals. So many hospitals have already been shut down on the border with Mexico because they've been overwhelmed. And that's coming right up here. Right up the 81 corridor, I might add. And it's not just the criminal illegal aliens, it's the drugs. The opiate crisis that is affecting every community in this state and across this country. 100% of the heroin, which is an opiate that people get addicted to after they've started with the illegal prescription drugs, 100% of the heroin comes across the border from Mexico. And 80% of the fentanyl, which is so lethal that an illegal alien smuggled in enough fentanyl just last week to kill 200,000 people into Virginia. That's how bad it is. And it's coming across our border. If we want to stop the drugs, if we want to stop this just absolutely overwhelming supply of drugs that are coming into our communities, destroying our families, we have to stop the supply at the border with Mexico, which is another reason to build a wall. And in human trafficking, it's the same thing. The average life expectancy for a girl who gets into human trafficking, mostly starting at the border, is 21 years old. If we want to stop human trafficking, if we want to stop the drug flow into our country, and if we want to stop the crime, let's build the wall and support the president's policies. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Our next candidate running for the United States Senate is going to be on the ballot for the Libertarian Party. And I think as we look across the country and see what seems to be disenchantment with the two major parties, it's interesting to me to see how the Libertarian Party has grown and how is becoming more successful. The candidate that will be on the ticket for the Libertarian Party is Matt Waters. He grew up in Hampton, Virginia. He went to George Mason and has worked in nonprofit work and has been engaged in campaigns over the course of his career. He lives in Fairfax County, Virginia, with his wife and 5 children. Before we hear from Mr. Waters, we are going to see his video.
This is the slogan of my campaign: money equals freedom. If we give more of our money to Washington, we have less of our own money. Right now, the average taxpayer works from January 1st to April 18th to pay the federal, state, and local taxes. That's more than groceries, clothing, and housing combined. We don't have the money. We're broke. We can't continue to kick the can down the road on entitlements. Social Security, bankrupt in 2035. Medicare, bankrupt in 2029. Medicaid, bankrupt in 2028. And we keep putting more people on, expecting it to work. It doesn't work. The private sector works. That's why we're here. We believe we want you to keep more of your own hard labor, your money. Keep it in your pocket. You can do better with it than Washington can.
Well, thank you so much for having me. That was a rowdy day. It was a kickoff campaign in Buena Vista, Virginia, and quite a day. I know Jennifer and Corey remember that, rowdy, and I'm glad to be here. My name is Matt Waters. I am the Libertarian candidate, a nominee for U.S. Senate here in the great state of Virginia. I have 5 kids. We homeschool. And I've been married 20 years. And so I'm honored to give a DC talk to all you Jesus freaks out here. I'm glad to be here. So, and especially, come on now, I am a Southern Baptist, and probably maybe one of the few libertarian Southern Baptists I know in my church. So, you know, we're a strange breed. But look, I promised the other candidates here this morning that I wouldn't make an issue that I am the only Southern Baptist in the race, the only evangelical in the race, the only Virginian. I'm running against 2 carpetbaggers from Minnesota. So we're doing what we can here. By the way, I take my Second Amendment right seriously. I am the only conceal and carry candidate in the race, and that's so is my wife, Mrs. Waters. So be careful. She's a better shot than I am. But I'm guessing each of you probably have a copy of God's Word on your phone somewhere. If you can pull it out, turn to Samuel, 1 Samuel 8. If you remember the passage. And by the way, I'm a seminary student. I'm finishing a seminary degree at Reformed Theological Seminary. up in McLean. And if you go to 1 Samuel 8, this is really the beginning of the libertarian creed, right? This is where Samuel is talking to the Lord, and the Lord says, Samuel says, Lord, they want a king. What does God say? Shouldn't have a king. It's not going to turn out so well. If you go to 1 Samuel 8, you'll see there that, and by the way, this is the passage that Thomas Paine exegeted in the book that started, really, the revolution, called Common Sense. He exegeted 1 Samuel 8. Fantastic passage. And so what did God tell the people? He said, these will be the ways of your king, if you look at verse 11. He said, he will take your sons. Verse 12, he will appoint for himself commanders. Verse 13, he will take your daughters. Verse 14, he will take the best of your fields. Verse 15, he will take a tenth. Today, the government takes 25%. The church only asks for 10%. Verse 16, he will take your servants. Verse 17, he will take your flocks. Verse 18, and in that day you'll cry out to the Lord, and you'll say, what have we done? And the Lord will not answer you. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So the question I have for you is, shall we trust a state that reads your text messages, that listens to your phone calls? Shall we trust a state that promises to take care of your retirement security when the Congressional Budget Office has said that Social Security is going bankrupt in 2035, Medicare in 2029, and Medicaid in 2028? Retirement security is far too precious to give to Washington to figure out. That's why this campaign is calling for a public-private partnership of Social Security for a time and moving it completely out of Washington for you to have private retirement accounts in your name with, believe it or not, money in your account. Because today the Social Security Trust Fund is neither. There's no trust and there's no fund. There's not going to be there anything for us when we get to retirement age. Shall we ask other nations and peoples to respect the sovereignty of the United States of America while we have forces and troops in over 150 countries around the globe? Is that who we want to be? And can we afford it? Our military budget, $700 billion. It's bigger than the Chinese, the Russians, Germany, France, UK combined. That's a very big military budget, very big. And the reason it's big is because we're policing the world, the entire globe. Shall we, as followers of the Prince of Peace, trust a state or support a government policy of shipping $100 billion of arms to a rogue nation like Saudi Arabia? Should we drop, so Saudi Arabia can drop made in USA bombs on school buses full of children in Yemen? Is that what we want to be? Is that who we are? I don't think so. Shall we trust a state that locks up more African Americans and Latinos for doing drugs at the very same rate as white Americans, yet we are off the hook? What's wrong with the justice system? Shall we trust a state that promises you universal health care and free of charge? Shall we trust a state that tells you you can keep your health care? I ask you, have the Democrats and Republicans overstepped the purpose of government? Jefferson told us what it was in the Declaration of Independence: to protect our rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness or property. And that's it. Anything beyond that, the government is not supposed to be doing. The government is here to protect our rights. And my question is, have the Democrats and Republicans earned your trust? Have they been good stewards of your taxes? America, each American in this audience, in this country, owes Uncle Sam $70,000. That's your share of the national debt that's growing at $1 million a minute. Have the two political parties leveled with you about what more and more and more government means? It means less freedom to each one of us. A government big enough to give you everything you want is big enough to take it all away. My answer: the Democrats and Republicans have not earned our trust. They have not earned our sacred trust or our vote. That's why I'm asking you on November 6th to think out of the box. The duopoly, the statists, who use state to their own means for their own purposes. We, libertarians, believe in the right to life, and I mean life. I've been in pro-life work my entire life, liberty, and property. I would say don't waste your vote. Choose freedom. Proclaim liberty throughout the land. I ask for your vote, and you can join me at mattwaters.com. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mr. Waters. Now, the third candidate that has run for the United States Senate is a Democratic candidate. He was not able to be here. He was here earlier in the fall during the campaign season for the U.S. Senate Town Hall. Unable to be here today, Tim Kaine. Tim Kaine got his start in politics after being a lawyer for a period of time in the city of Richmond, was the mayor of the city of Richmond, and served on city council. He was then elected to statewide office and served as lieutenant governor. In 2012, he was elected to his first term in the United States Senate. He is the incumbent. As we all know, last year he was the vice presidential running mate for Hillary Clinton. And because they came up short, he continues to be in the Senate and is asking to be reelected. He has given us two ads that you can look at, and then he's got a video message that he'd like for you all to see. So thank you.
I served 2 years in the Coast Guard.
I served 2 tours in Iraq.
And both of my parents served in the Army.
But finding jobs for veterans after coming home is tough. When Tim Kaine heard that, he promised to do something about it.
He wrote a law making it easier for veterans to find work.
I'm a Republican, and I like that Tim Kaine is able to get Republicans and Democrats to work together on this.
That's rare these days.
It's made a difference.
I'm Tim Kaine, and I approve this message. When I came to the Senate, I formed the Career and Technical Education Caucus, and we've worked with both the Obama and the Trump administration. We passed laws to expand training opportunities. We're making a commitment to move ahead with a massive shipbuilding campaign, and that'll mean thousands of jobs for Virginia workers, the welders and the electricians and the others who are doing this patriotic work every day. It's not just about work, it's also about keeping our country safe.
I'm Tim Kaine, and I approve this message. Here in Virginia, we have to build an economy that works for all.
Greetings to the Liberty Convocation. I'm sorry that I can't be with you today, but I was very happy to be with you on campus for the wonderful debate that you sponsored a few weeks back, and I've enjoyed being with you during convocations in the past. I'm happy to explain to you and ask for your help for my campaign to be reelected to the Senate on November 6th. And I encourage everyone to be very, very involved. It's so important. I started my public service career, as many of you know, when I took a year off from law school in 1980 and 81 to serve with Jesuit missionaries in Honduras. I went there not knowing much about other countries, and I definitely went there as part of my faith journey to try to find moral principles and faith values that would inspire a career of public service. I ran a school that taught kids to be welders and carpenters, and by the time that year was finished, I came back very firm in my conviction that I wanted to use my modest gifts to try to help other people in accord with the teachings of my church. And that was now nearly 40 years ago. Finishing law school, I worked for 17 years in Richmond as a civil rights lawyer, helping people who'd been discriminated against because of the color of their skin or their disability. And then in 1994, I started what is now a 24-year career in public service, representing first my city as a city councilman and mayor, then my Commonwealth as lieutenant governor and governor, and now as a United States Senator. I love my job. It's a challenging, difficult time, but in some ways, I think the time is really suited for people who know how to bring people together, which is what I've done through my entire career. My campaign theme is a Virginia that works for all, and it's 3 basic ideas. First, it's about Virginia. I don't represent DC to Virginia, I represent Virginia to DC. And so what I do is I listen to Virginians, and they often tell me about a problem and ask me to help them solve it. A veterans unemployment rate that's too high, inadequate funding for pediatric cancer research, Virginia Indian tribes struggling for decades to be federally recognized, educators knowing that we need to focus on the affordable college or career and technical education for students for whom that's the right path. And I try to take these concerns that are expressed and pass meaningful legislation. Or I will sometimes hear from Virginians solutions that they think we should do more of at the federal level. Novel programs to deal with addiction, novel programs to deal with battling the effects of climate change, to invest in resilience. I'm very proud that my work for Virginia in my first 6 years in the Senate has led to meaningful legislation. President Obama signed 11 pieces of legislation that I wrote, and with his signing of an opioid addiction bill that I worked on in the last few days, President Trump has now signed 20 bills that I have written together, often with Republican colleagues. Second theme of the campaign has got to be a Virginia that works. It's about the workforce. It's about honoring work, the dignity of work, and making sure we have the best workforce in the world. That's one of the reasons why the Virginia economy has improved so significantly over the last 50 years. That's education from pre-K to post-grad. It's career and technical education and apprenticeships. And it's immigration reform. We have to get immigration reform right to have the kind of workforce that we need. Some, when they talk about immigration, only talk about problems. They only talk about negatives. But my state, Virginia, was 1 out of 100 foreign-born when I was born, and it's 1 out of 9 foreign-born today. And we've gone from bottom quarter family income to top quarter, one of only 2 states that have done it. Immigration reform done right can help us succeed. To be about work also requires fair wages, so you don't work for minimum wage and be below the poverty level, and a tax code that doesn't advantage corporations to the detriment of workers. But finally, my campaign is about a Virginia that works for all. Those last 2 words in the Pledge of Allegiance. We're living in a divisive time. Often the messages sent even from the White House are not about for all. They're about for few or for some or for me. Messages of division, picking fights every day with this person or that group. I believe those last 2 words in the Pledge of Allegiance are the essence of what the pledge is about being an American, that we commit not just to liberty and justice, not just to a nation under God and indivisible, but one that is for all, where we battle health care for all, jobs for all, education for all, security for all, equality for all. And when we say those words, we have to say them, we have to mean them, and that's what I think this election is about. Are we going to send that message that in 2018, Virginia and the United States is a nation still dedicated to the principle that it's got to be for all? I would love to have your support and continue my work in the U.S. Senate. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
All right, so that sums up the candidates for United States Senate. We're pleased today that we have, again, as I said, we have the 6th and the 5th District congressional races represented here. The 5th District candidates are Denver Riggleman and Leslie Coburn. Ms. Coburn declined to join us today, but we are delighted to have with us Denver Riggleman, who grew up in Northern Virginia. He went into the Air Force and served his country, served our country in the United States Air Force with distinction. He went into business after getting out of the Air Force and wound up in Nelson County, which is right in the heart of Virginia's 5th District, where he has a business now. He ran for the nomination for governor on the Republican side last year. Did not get that nomination, but was nominated earlier this year to be the 5th District candidate for Congress. Let's watch his videos, and then we'll hear from Denver Riggleman.
I'm Denver Riggleman, and I approve this ad.
When my country called, I answered. I enlisted in the Air Force at 22, climbed through the ranks, and became a commissioned intelligence officer. That was when my team helped plan the first bombing runs into Afghanistan after 9/11. Today, I own 2 successful companies, including Silverback Distillery here in Nelson County. I know how to create jobs and keep our nation safe. With your vote, I'll put my experience as a veteran and a businessman to work for you in Congress.
I'm Denver Riggleman, and I approve this ad.
The new tax cuts are helping families and businesses right here in Virginia. We need to keep that going. William saved $60 per month, helping him to buy groceries and pay bills. With the new tax cuts, Jesse has been able to hire up to 15 new employees. In Congress, I will fight to keep the tax cuts so that families can keep more of what they earn and businesses can continue to grow. Now you know why I have the nickname the Chubby Lumberjack. Was that pretty amazing? But thanks for coming here. I think it's my first time doing Convocation at Liberty. Had amazing conversations behind the scenes back here in the green room because I'm so famous now. And but what was amazing about it was what you guys are doing at the ages of 20, 21, and 22 is astounding to me, because when I was 20 to 21, I was pretty much eating dirt. So I really do appreciate how smart you all are and what you bring to the table, because I have daughters that are 26, 24, and 21, and they're just amazing. I got married at 19 years old. I wasn't really all that bright in high school. So I figured if I got married to somebody smarter than me, that would sort of bring me up. And my wife is definitely that. So I got married at 19 because I was living in a Chevette and I wanted to live in a house. So got married at 19. 3 years later at 22, my wife got pregnant somehow. And I don't know how I can go into that here at Liberty. But anyway, so she... Yeah, I know it's been awkward for me, but anyway, at 22 years old, got married, and well, she got pregnant somehow again, like I said, and then I said, I want to serve my country, but I also need health care. And so that's where we started, where my military career started in 1992, and for 3 years I was an enlisted maintainer on C-141 jets, and I got 2 associate's degrees full-time. I worked full-time. I worked as a bouncer. I was the shortest bouncer in the history of bouncers, but I worked as a bouncer, and also put in doors. So if you ever need an entry door, patio door, or storm door put in, I'm your guy. Anyway, so at the age of 25, I worked my way through college, became a National Honor Society, National Junior Honor Society, and one day a captain pulled me in and said, Denver, you're barely smart enough to go to college. Where do you want to go? Now, I'm the oldest of 8 kids. None of us ever went to college, and I actually got into UVA and onto the wait list to Princeton. So got into UVA, graduated #1 out of my class in the ROTC side, and immediately went into Air Force Intelligence. Well, while I was at UVA, something happened there. We actually get to build our own parables and our own life experiences. And I want to tell you all just a little bit of my history. I did a lot of things in the military, but I only have 7 minutes. So I want to let you guys know who I am and why I believe the way I believe, because I think that's important to all of you here, since this is the first time I've been here. In 1997, I'm 27 years old. I was a 2-time state powerlifting champion. I played some college football. I know it doesn't look it now, but I actually was in shape and pretty amazing. So I got invited to a field day for my daughter's kindergartner class. And I thought, this is really cool. And they said, Denver, would you want to do a tug of war against 30 kindergartner 5-year-olds and a teacher? I'm like, well, sure I would. I said, but that's going to be a little scary. You know, I'm a big, strong, strapping, incredible man. You know, I don't want to hurt these small children, and especially not the teacher, because I want my daughter to get good grades. So anyhow, so we go and we're going to have this tug of war. So we're there in field day, and I'm sitting there, and there's 30 kindergartners, and there's the teacher right there. And I'm doing the combined weight assessment on everything here. And I don't know if you guys know this, the average weight of a kindergartner is between 45 and 47 pounds. So say it's 50 pounds, right? And say there's 30 of them, so that's 1,500 pounds. Say the teacher weighs 150 pounds, so now I got about 1,600, almost a ton of weight that I'm going to pull against, but I'm a big, strong man, right? I'm a big, strong man. And I'm like, wait a second, what's going to happen here? But I can't imagine that these little kindergartners and this teacher can outpull somebody like me. There's no way, right? I'm a strapping lad. So we went to pull, and I want to tell you right now, they almost ripped my arms off. So I tried it 3 times, and after I got back from the hospital, I figured this is the deal. What is it about large groups of people that can overwhelm you personally? When I started into politics, which is only about 1.5 years ago, I hate politics and I hated politicians. We were being attacked regulatory-wise at my distillery. I think I'm allowed to say I own a distillery at Liberty also. At my distillery, we were being attacked by 8 or 9 regulatory agencies for 4 years. And I tried to fight by myself, not being involved in politics, just going up to the State House. And here's what I saw. I saw cronyism. I saw people that threatened me. I had people that tell me I was collateral damage, that I could never get any bills to the State House because I didn't participate in the process, which I thought was pay to play. I had a lobbyist tell me that if I wasn't at the dinner table, I was on the menu. You know, I served my country. I started a company. I started and sold a DoD company. I am still a senior consultant for electronic warfare and countermeasures at the Pentagon today. Probably the only House candidate running with a day job. And what I saw was they did not care who you were, where you came from, if you were rational. They didn't care. So let's go back to the kindergartners.
So when everybody's out there, what I started to learn, and what I told my wife and even my daughters when I tell them this story is this: all of us are pulling against kindergartners, and if you're by yourself, you're probably going to lose. And what I find out is you got to surround yourself with great people, but also the guy upstairs, right? And what I started to learn is that there was no way for me to win alone, even though I thought I could. And you guys know, I am, sort of the Tom Cruise of the house races, right? I mean, who could be any better than that? The chubby Tom Cruise. But anyhow, so when you're pulling against kindergartners, when you're fighting this, there's one thing I want you guys to think about with motive. So I'm a very learned person, and I like to study, so I was watching Netflix last night, and there was a British show, and they talked about cui bono. It's Latin. If there's anybody who's taken Latin out here, it's like, who stands to gain? Who stands to gain? And what I saw in the House, what I saw in the State House, what I saw when I was actually pulling against kindergartners and things of that nature, I want you guys to think about a motive if you ever get involved with politics, because I hate it, is this: who stands to gain? And when you're trying to help and when you're trying to serve, look at the motive of every person you're against, and you're going to find out there's something pretty ugly out there. Is that money drives politics. And that's something that is probably anathema to my soul. And I also want to tell you guys this: if you don't find those right people to be with you, if you don't fight with like-minded people, those kindergartners will rip your arms off. Now, I know it's a funny story about the kindergartners and about cui bono, who stands to gain. But here's what I promise you guys: I'll be transparent. I'll do the best I can to make sure I always tell the truth. I despise money in politics, but what I really despise is those in large groups who want to take away our individual liberties. I'm a Liberty Republican. You guys are the best. I love that you would have me here. God bless. And if you ever see me in magazines as a chubby lumberjack, know this: I will always defend your rights. I will always do what's right for you, and you can always come see me anytime because I live in Nelson County right up the street. Okay, guys? Thank you very much for having me. I love you all. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Riggleman. So that's the 5th District slate. Leslie Coburn, Denver Riggleman. They'll be on the ballot if you live in Campbell County or in most of Bedford. Or in the 5th District. So the last race we want to feature today for you all is the 6th District Congressional race. The two candidates that will be that are competing for that, as I said before, Jennifer Lewis, a Democrat who is here with us, and Ben Klein, who's a Republican who could not be here but will be represented by his campaign manager, Dan Webb. Ms. Lewis grew up on a dairy farm in upstate New York and moved to Waynesboro, to Augusta County in the Valley, not too far from here, in the heart of the 6th District. She was a teacher for a period of time and then undertook mental health counseling, which I think is what she does now. She is a first-time candidate for office. So we are really grateful for her being here today. And before we hear from Ms. Lewis, we're going to watch her campaign video.
I'm Jennifer Lewis, and I'm running for Congress because career politicians have failed us. Crumbling schools, stagnant wages, a broken healthcare system that puts profits over people. These are moral challenges that demand true leadership, not do-nothing legislators waiting for their shot at higher office. I'm offering an alternative on November 6th. If you trust me with your vote, together we can reject our failed politics and start solving problems for a change. I'm Jennifer Lewis, and I approve this message. I refuse to watch myself. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here this morning. At least I still think it's morning. Thank you, Mr. Robert Hurt, and all the Liberty students for being here and inviting me to be here today. I'm very happy to be here. As President Falwell always has said, students are not only free, but encouraged to form their own opinions about what they hear at Convocation. It is a vital part of the higher learning experience, and I agree. It is important that we are allowed to be free thinkers and form our own opinions. It is equally important that we do this in a way that encourages civil discourse and rejects the language of racism, xenophobia, anti-Semitism, and hate. I know you are all deeply saddened, as I was, about the terrorist attack at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. My fear is that the toxic partisan language used in politics these days only encourages the worst in people, and some of these people take action. Let's not be afraid of what we perceive as the unknown, uncomfortable, or unfamiliar. I challenge each of you to step outside of your comfort zone and use your free thought to determine what is or what isn't morally acceptable. I'm sure you're all familiar with Matthew chapter 25, which states, "Come, you are who are blessed by my Father. Inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you all welcomed me. Naked, and you clothed me. Ill, and you cared for me. In prison, and you visited me." When there is a need in the world, it is our moral imperative to attend to that need. As a mental health worker, I have worked with those who are homeless, starving, addicted, afflicted, and imprisoned. Every day, I see people who are on the edges of society, just wanting basic decency of housing, food, and medical care. Too often, we see on those on the margins of society don't act to do anything to help. I ask you, isn't it our responsibility as human beings to lift those up who have not? Some would contend that it's not the government's responsibility to provide all those to those who are ill, hungry, strangers, or imprisoned. However, aren't we all better off when we afford basic human rights to those who need them the most? I believe we need health care for all, and it is a human right. That's why I support Medicare for All, which will lower health care costs, cover more people, and increase doctors and nurses, especially in our rural areas, and we have a lot of rural areas in our district that are currently underserved or not served at all right now. I also support an education plan that will help modernize our grade schools, tuition-free public college and university, and making career and technical education a dignified career plan. And also, I support reducing interest rates on student loans. I also believe that it is our responsibility to protect our environment. We should invest in renewable energy that provides jobs and stops the destruction of our planet. I am president and founder of Friends of Augusta, which fights against the fracked gas pipeline, especially the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, where I've been focusing my energy. We know that they're not necessary for our state. They have the risk of ruining our water, ravaging our farms and forests. I also believe that we should be accepting of those who want to come to the United States to make a better life for themselves. We should be welcoming of immigrants who come here legally seeking asylum from countries torn apart by warfare, famine, and oppression. I believe we have a moral obligation to improve the lives of everyone through standing up for basic human rights and providing for those needs and for everybody in our society. I hope you come out on November 6th and vote, even if it's not for me, which I hope that it is. And remember that the democratic process is the only way that we can make sure that we have representatives who actually represent us. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. Our last candidate, also competing for election in the 6th District, is Ben Klein. Mr. Klein cannot be with us, but his campaign manager, Dan Webb is here, and Dan Webb is familiar to the campus because he went to school here. So after, well, let me tell you about Ben. So Ben was first elected, he grew up in Rockbridge County, first elected in 2002 to the Virginia House of Delegates, where he has served since that time for the last 16 years. He practices law in Lexington and lives in the 6th District with his family. And so we're going to see Ben's ad, and then we're going to hear from Mr. Webb.
Washington's not listening. For far too long, they've ignored us and communities like ours. I'm Ben Klein. My wife and I want our daughters to have the same opportunities we had growing up here. It starts with breaking the dysfunction in Washington, bringing transparency and accountability to end the corruption, and getting them focused on helping our small businesses and job creators. I'm Ben Klein. I approve this message, and in Congress, I'll make sure they hear us, loud and clear.
I want to thank you guys for having me here. Delegate Klein was able to make it to Convocation a few weeks ago, but he couldn't make it today, but I do hope you all had a chance to catch that. One of the stipulations when I took the job with Delegate Klein is that I had to have my youngest son, that cute baby at the end, be in our television ad. So we got that done. Our contract is satisfied. I want to thank you for having me here. I am an alum of Liberty University. I graduated in 2010 with a religion major, no political science, and what I got into politics, I'll never know. But I do want to say that Liberty has changed a lot since 2010. When I was dating my then wife, we could barely get away with a church-approved side hug. Now I hear you guys are doing full hugs on campus. This is crazy. I just leave room for Jesus, all right? As a former RA, I just got to warn you, all right? But I do want to talk about, I'm here for Ben Klein. Ben's a great guy, and one of the reasons I took the job with him when he offered it is because I believe he's a good man. Ben did grow up in Rockbridge County. He moved there with his parents when he was 3 years old, and he graduated from Lexington High School, went to college, graduated with a political science degree, and one of his first things he did was get an internship with Congressman Goodlatte, who is our retiring congressman. He worked in the mailroom. He received constituent correspondence, sorted the mail, did all the fun responses, and over the years he worked his way up to becoming chief of staff. He moved back to Rockbridge County, ran for the House of Delegates, and when he was 30 years old was elected to the House of Delegates as one of the youngest members in the House of Delegates. The great thing about the Virginia legislature is that it's a citizen legislature. That means you have to have a job in your community. You work part-time in Richmond for a couple months, then you go home and you have to be with your constituents at the grocery store, in the community, and working a job. So he went and got his law degree, and he became a prosecutor in Harrisonburg. And when he was prosecuting in Harrisonburg, the cases that he focused on primarily were cases of domestic violence. So Delegate Klein, during that time, sat with, counseled, advocated for hundreds and hundreds of women who had been abused domestically. And that is the core of who he is. He's someone who cares about the most vulnerable in our community. And that experience as a prosecutor prosecuting domestic violence cases is why in the legislature, he advocated and passed laws that increased protections for women of domestic violence, increased punishments for abusers. And those laws were signed on a bipartisan measure, usually often 100-0 votes. And it's that care and desire and motivation to protect those most vulnerable among us is why he pushed for issues of pro-life. Whenever a budget comes up every 2 years, you can offer amendments. And every single year, Delegate Klein offered amendments that said, state funds cannot go to abortion providers. He also put forward a resolution called the Day of Tears Resolution that passed the House of Delegates. And it's so that we can remember, take one day out of the year to remember and reflect on the millions and millions of unborn children whose lives were cut short. It's because he cares. So, why has Ben running for Congress? Delegate Klein loves the constituent service. He loves serving the community and advocating on behalf of his constituents. So when Congressman Goodlatte retired, he saw an opportunity to expand his influence and expand the service that he'd like to do for this country in this Commonwealth. So he's running, and why is he running? In this election, we have two opposing views, as we often do, and both well-meaning motivations on both sides. But we have a view of every problem can be solved by a government program. Every problem can be solved by increasing spending for a government program. But you know what that means? When you advocate for a program that increases the spending by $32 trillion, how are you going to pay for that? What does that mean? That means if you want to pay for it, you have to double every American's income tax. Ben Klein is for lower taxes, for making middle-class tax cuts permanent. But why? At the core of it, why are conservatives for lower taxes? It's because the breadwinner of the family, if they're burdened by taxes and regulations, they have to work even longer hours every single day. They have to be away from their children and their family. Our children are served when our parents are home with them. They have to work a job, obviously, but when we're spending time away from our family, the children are underserved. And when your parents aren't in your community, in your family, in your household, it's better statistically when we have parents with children. It's not fair for small businesses to be burdened by extreme regulations from Washington bureaucrats. It's not fair that bureaucrats can make decisions for our community when the decisions should be made here, locally. The 10th Amendment of the Constitution says, the powers not enumerated to Congress and the federal government are left to the states and to the people. And why is that? Because our forefathers had the wisdom and the knowledge to know that the man and the woman in a family know what's best for their family. The man and the woman in a community know what's best for their community, not Washington bureaucrats. So that's what's at stake in this election. Ben Klein is for lower taxes, less government regulations. He believes that the free market is the best supplier for human needs. He is pro-life, he is pro-Second Amendment, and I know that when he goes to Washington, and if you elect him and vote for him on November 6th at the Vine Center, or wherever your precinct may be, that he'll advocate for you, he'll listen to you, and he'll take your values to Washington. I thank you for your time. I hope you can vote for Ben Klein on November 6th. Thank you.
Well, Dan Webb, thank you very much. You seem like a pro up there for your candidate. We are grateful to many people for making this possible, certainly the Helms School of Government, the Communications School of Communications, as well as the law school. Grateful to the great Convocation team for helping out or putting this together, and all of our student volunteers for helping out. Most of all, I want to thank each of you for being here. Obviously, you didn't have to be here, but you are here, and I can tell you as somebody who has been in politics that I really deeply believe that the future for our country is in your hands, and that gives me hope. And the fact that you're here and learning about the candidates, I hope, will pique your interest and cause you to do some more investigation so that you'll be prepared to do your civic duty a week from tomorrow on November 6th. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you soon.